Hello, Shelley. How are you?
Hi, Carla. I'm very well. How are you?
I am well. So, continuing where we left off, thank you for our conversation about fear and transformational fear. And I wanted to ask you some questions about failure.
Yeah.
I've been having conversations after our last discussion about Fail Brilliantly, your book, and how we can learn to look at failure differently. And it's interesting to me how much resistance I'm getting.
Wow.
Because people, I was talking with a couple of people about how, it's a fairly new idea. I think you said in the last 200 years that
Yeah.
we really started defining failure the way we do now. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It only came into our vocabulary and into our consciousness as a concept, failure as in personal failure, in the 1800s. Whereas before, failure just meant that something didn't pan out as it was supposed to. It had nothing to do with you are a failure. So people didn't think of themselves really as failures until, the late 1800s. And then it suddenly became, oh, that person is a failure because he didn't get or arrive at the place that he wanted to. And so now I think we have completely bought into the success failure paradigm in society. It's like either you're a success or a failure. And usually that means either you've made a lot of money and you're rich and famous, or you're nobody. And I wanted to contest this idea because it's one that we've made. We've made this idea. And the idea of success has its roots in something very real. It's about survival. And when, I don't want to say when we were all monkeys, because we were never monkeys, but um, when when humanity was more primitive, then that monkey or primate that got the banana was the one who survived. So of course success equals survival. Success, I got the banana, I'm the one who survives. But now in our world, we have replaced that proverbial banana with absolutely everything. You know, our little 4 year olds, if they don't get A's, then they're not going to get the banana. That's what we think. Or if our kids don't win the soccer game, then they're not going to, survive. And if they don't get an A's in college or A's in their university degrees, then they're going to be failures. They're not going to survive. They're not going to thrive. We've talked about how that's not really the way life goes anywhere, because every single day there are what I call unexpected outcomes. Something doesn't go as planned. I never planned to get a tumor in the middle of my head. So what am I going to do with that? Or you're trying to run a race and you twist your ankle and you're not going to get to run the race. We can rage against the universe and we can say, oh, I failed to arrive at my destination. But so much of what we call success is actually luck. And so much of living with failure has to do with understanding that failure doesn't mean, or not getting what you plan to get is not necessarily failure. It just
Mhm.
means it didn't turn out the way you wished it would. And so it's very sort of infantile, I think, to believe this thing that we've created, the story where if you put your mind to it, you'll get it. You might not. And I think that's why the book, interestingly, has not taken off in America as much as it has across the world. So in Taiwan and China and Kuwait, they are really interested in the book, and the rights have just sold there because they're interested, because they are just success driven. I mean, their failure is, people commit suicide rather than face the shame of not succeeding at school. So I think what I'm trying to do is give a space for us to reconsider how we've constructed our society as in the success failure paradigm, and
Right.
maybe look at us being different kinds of creatures. Maybe we're not completely success failure oriented. Maybe there's a different way of looking at failure and success by association.
Right. And so, how for women, how do you see? what shifts can women make in their day-to-day lives to help them shift into not feeling like failures? Because I think that the way that our culture is right now, where I know with a lot of my clients, right, they have this sense that they must be perfect. They must have perfect homes, perfect hair, perfect bodies. They must do the perfect post or look perfect on Instagram and Facebook. And it's causing a lot of anxiety and depression because they're feeling like failures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for women particularly, that's a really great question, because we are so inundated with societal expectations and images of what, what it looks like to be successful, or to be ideally thin, ideally rich, ideally perfect in every way. And so these messages with these impossibly ridiculous standards come our way. And of course, so many of the standards are photoshopped or enhanced. And so we
Yes.
measure our normal bodies and selves moving through the world with an image that is constructed. And then somebody once said, never compare your inside with somebody else's outside, because you have no idea what's going on in their inside. I think women generally suffer from a sense of not being good enough. And, we've got a patriarchal society to thank for that, I do believe. But I feel that we contribute to that narrative, and we do it to each other. Like when somebody's thin, we say, you look fantastic. And when they're fat, we kind of look away, and we get embarrassed about, embracing ourselves. And when we're fat, we feel, often ashamed. It's hard to feel, good, not necessarily because of our weight, but because of the narrative that we are being given. And so I think it's probably more important for us now more than ever to look at not being perfect, or not being the kind of story that society is giving us, as an option, not because we want to be less than, but because we want to be more truly ourselves. So,
Mm-hmm.
so for example, I just think, when I was young and growing up, and I had anorexia, which we'll talk about perhaps next time. I had this sense that being perfect and thin was the ultimate goal. But when I was older and I had a tumor in my head, then just the idea that I even once worried about being perfect and thin was so ridiculous, because I thought, what good is being thin? Because I was thin then. What good is being thin if you're not going to survive? You can be thin when you're dead. That was kind of what I thought.
That's pretty thin.
Pretty thin. But it's like, it's all in context. So I think that this obsession comes maybe when we have lost sight of the things that really matter. And when you grow up where I grew up, which is Africa, and so many people are struggling and starving, and poverty is such a real thing, you kind of get a different perspective on what success and failure, in terms of personal success and failure, looks like. And I think that's healthy. And I think we need to realize that in our, comfortable middle class lives, we sometimes need a bit of a dose of reality to remember that for some people, success looks like getting a meal that day. And then we can think, oh, is it really important that, I get rid of this lip line? How important is that? Do I want to obsess over it? Am I going to eventually die? Yes. Do I want to live a joyful life? Yes. Are there other things I can focus on then to make that happen? Or does living a joyful life mean that I have the thinnest legs and the smoothest skin in the universe? Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah.
I tackled it that way.
So really what it sounds like you did is
Yeah.
shifted your focus from the outside world, the comparative world, to
Yes.
an internal focus of what was right for you, what was important to you. And
Absolutely. And what is important in life, I think
yeah,
one of the important things is we want to have joy. All of us want joy. But then I think we replace all the things we think joy means. being perfect in our, in some sort of media induced image, being perfect with regard to that. But what if being perfect means being present, absolutely here in the moment, and grateful for being alive? What if that was joy? Then, I don't know, I think reframing what we see as success and failure could be really helpful, could make us happier.
And I think it's funny that we're talking about this right now. Earlier today, I was working on, I do a weekly inspirational Facebook post on my Dr. Carla page, and I was trying to do it about joy, right? And that really joy is not this thing that we find. It is already within us. And if we can learn to quiet this busy, busy mind and quiet these busy, busy hands, then and the body, and go inside and find out what matters to me, not what the magazine says or the TV says or my best friend says but what matters to me. And I think that that's what joy is, because joy knows that it's there, and it is about, and I think this is congruent with what you are saying, it's about just slowing it down enough to find out what truly makes you happy, which is in here. It's never going to be in a pair of high heels or an expensive necklace or a new car. True joy is going to be in here.
Yeah, it absolutely
Does that resonate? Is that?
Yeah, you are so right, Carla. You just hit it on the head, because I think true joy, we can't get it if you don't already have it in you, and you can't uncover it by some process of doing something in the world. You're never going to get it. The more stuff you have, the more stuff you do to yourself. I don't think that will shift things hugely. I think it might make some people more comfortable. It, certainly, being a certain weight for me is, and enables me to be more active than being another weight, and I prefer being that than that, and that's fine. But I think ultimately it's such a deep thing to find your bliss, and it goes so beyond the external. And I think it has to. There are, I think I was speaking the other day to a 98-year-old woman at the grocery store, and I asked her what her secret was, because I wanted to give her a hand and help her, and she said, no, I can do this myself. And so I said, what's your secret? And she said, being creative every day in some way is her secret to living a long life. And I said, oh. And she said, yes, because when I'm creative, I'm joyful and I feel most truly myself. And I thought about that, and I thought, look, at this point when you're 90 or something, I think she said she was 98, but I looked at her face, and there were 1,000 lines, and her body was frail and small, and her eyes were just like lights. And I thought, there is something so beautiful about this woman, and it's her joy. So that made me really think about all the things that, I think will bring me joy, or I think I need in order to have joy. I think some of them help, but I don't think they're the answer.
And I like the way you phrase that, because you're right, there is that part where there are some external things that make us feel like our best selves. And I'm the same with you on weight. I have a weight that just feels right to me, and I kind of naturally stay there, right? It's just kind of there. But if I get a little too under it because I'm under stress or not taking care of myself, I feel frail. If I get which it doesn't really happen, but if I kind of get a little like puffy feeling, that doesn't feel good, right? So my body, I think all of our bodies, it's not a scale. It is a weight that we each have, which can really vary from person to person, right? I could never carry, 20 more pounds than what I am. I wouldn't feel good. And some people, their ideal weight is lighter or heavier. And I think that it's things like that that do make us feel more comfortable. And when we're more comfortable in our skin, then joy is, I think, more available for us, because we are body, mind, spirit creatures, right? And I think joy really flows when the body is happy, when we're not too cold, or when we're eating right, or we're not too hot, or we're not too thin or too heavy, or any of that. So I think they work in concert when we're, again, really listening to what is right for my unique being.
Oh, absolutely, Carla. You've just said it so well, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is one of those things. Absolutely. Oh, so
So
thank you.
I
Really, it's so
just love sharing with you and
yeah.
hearing you and taking in all the wisdom you have. I just love it.
Oh,
I love
you
it.
too.
I think Fail Brilliantly has so many messages to teach us. Like you said, we really have a split in our culture of you're either a success or you're a failure. And
Yeah.
we use failure in the negative, which is why I think I'm getting so much pushback when I try and engage people. They're like, no, you fail, you fail. And I'm like, well, no, it's just that you didn't arrive at a destination. It's a different outcome. And I just
Yeah.
love how much resistance I'm getting, because it tells
Oh, that
me
is cool.
it
I love
is.
that.
I'm getting a lot of resistance, and I like it.
I like that too, because it just shows you, I know that that's where we're at, right? Because, you know,
Yes.
we want all the self-help books and the books on success and how to become a success. But Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, which I've talked about before, I think, said, you can do everything you can, but then it is a matter of luck whether you succeed materially and financially in the world or not. It really is, it's luck. And you have to have that lucky break. All materially successful people have a lucky break somewhere along the line. And that doesn't happen for all of us. And so Fail Brilliantly is about how do the rest of us live with the unexpected outcomes which don't lead us to the dream house, the dream job, the dream career. What happens, you know, for the other 90%, you know?
You made me think of something,
Yeah,
okay? As an author myself, right? And we think that success is New York Times bestseller list, right?
right.
But what if, in line with what you said, what if it is success? What if where, let's say we have person A and person B, and person A makes New York Times best-selling list, and that spirals them to success. What if the universe is so brilliantly smart that the reason person B didn't make the New York Times best-selling list is because it wasn't right for them, that the
Yeah,
stress would have been too much, that the
yeah.
upheaval would have been too much. I heard a story recently about, I don't know the name of the book and it doesn't really matter, about a young woman who was in the limelight and New York Times, and it was too much for her. It was
Yeah.
just too much for her. So what if even our definition of success, what if success is not getting to the New York Times best-selling list because we trust that the universe knows that we are not meant for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Or it's not the right time, or you know, your voice is not, or people aren't ready for what you have to say, and the time might
Yes.
come. And yeah, I feel a deep sense of trust. I mean, I have spectacularly failed, as I said, on 5 continents in so many ways. I've lost houses, you know, countries, continents, residencies, all kinds of things, and I feel completely okay with that. I do not feel like a personal failure. I feel like an adventurer. It's like you pick yourself up with your 2 suitcases and whatever you've got left, and you go, wow, that was hard. And then you go, I got to do the next thing, whatever it is. And then I wouldn't trade my, you know, the gifts that I've gotten through the struggles for anything. So whether Fail Brilliantly becomes a New York Times bestseller or not is not the measure of the success, but the fact that, you know, you turn that book into something and maybe it changes, you know, 500 people's lives instead of
Yes.
5 million. And does it have to be numbers? Does it have to always translate to more is better? What if those 500 people, what if it saved their lives? You know, that sort of thing. So we can't know. I think you have to have a great degree of trust in the wisdom of the universe. I do.
And I think, kind of to conclude it before I'm going to ask you for a nugget of wisdom, is how important that is for us as women, as wives, mothers, teachers, role models, daughters, to remember that every life matters. And so
Yes.
if we ever think that our life is small, if we are changing the life of one child, whether it's our child or a neighbor's child, if we are changing the one life of, a child on the street, or our mother who's failing, something like that, that is so important. That is such important work. And that
Yeah.
all of us as women have so much power to make a difference. We don't need to have a huge footprint on the planet. We can make a difference one day at a time. So, what kind of closing gem might you have for us today?
Maybe a challenge, Carla. I would like to throw out a challenge to any viewers. I would like to say, for the next 5 things that make you feel like a failure, just do an experiment and have a little discussion with yourself in which you say, what if this is not a failure? What if it's just an unexpected outcome? How do I feel about it then? And how do I feel about myself if I change that view from failure, oh, I failed at this, to, hey, I didn't expect that or want that? What does that do for you? So that would be my little challenge.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I see why you called it Fail Brilliantly. That is brilliant. Okay.
Thank you, Carla.
All right, my beautiful friend. I look forward to our next chat.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Shelley. Take good care.
Bye.
I'm trying to stop the recording. Okay.
Bye.